Hey everyone, welcome to today's live stream. My name is Warren. Welcome to the channel. If it's your first time here, make sure you subscribe, hit the notification bell to catch whenever these live streams go out. I try to do these on a weekly basis. And lastly, make sure to let me know what you want to learn about in a future live stream. So today we're going to be talking about how to read music notes on piano. I'm going to give you some background and information that you need, like if you're a complete newbie at piano. Of course, if you're more experienced and you're trying to just shore up some weak spots, you can go ahead and skip ahead. I'll put some timestamps in the live stream after the video is over. So we're going to be, I'll give you like a very basic background rundown fundamentals that you need to know. Then I'm going to run you through the exact process that I use for all of my students to get them to read music notes from the very first lesson, a process that works even for kids as young as 5 years old, believe it or not. And also I'll give you the materials that I use for them, just two very basic materials besides piano. That's all you need. Now, let's talk about some limiting beliefs. Limiting beliefs, but also just wrong beliefs in general. And this idea is from Nassim Taleb. And if you've ever heard of the Black Swan, probably not probably, and he's just got to be the greatest thinker alive at this point in time. So he has this whole concept called lecturing birds to fly. And first time I read this was kind of hilarious, but it makes so much sense. So just think about a bunch of professors. They're sitting around and they make the observation, oh, look, there are birds flying. Now, what they do is they start to do some research and learn a ton of theory to figure out why do birds fly. And then once they have formulated their theory, once they have developed the research, they then go back to the birds and then they teach them, this is how you actually fly. So if that sounds ass backwards, it's because it is. So in many ways, like reading music notes, it's kind of the same thing. Because if you think in the past, like how did they read music notes? They probably just started reading music notes. And then today we have tons of theory, all these method books. And I'm saying 90% of that is just totally useless. It's like they think you need an instruction manual, right? And another example is, let's say, business school. It's like the weirdest thing to me at this point in time in my life is I even considered it, so I understand where people are coming from. But you don't go to school to learn business. Going to business school to learn business. It's like you just learn to run a business by running a business. You just get into it, and then a lot of times these professors who teach business, they don't even know anything about business in the first place. Okay, you probably haven't even like run a business. Maybe they just got a business degree. Okay, so same thing with music, like learning to read music notes. It's like even I kind of fell for this because when I think about it, how did I learn to read music notes? Like when I was a younger kid, I probably just learned to read it by just doing it. But going to school, you get brainwashed into all this nonsense where you need to learn a ton of theory and present that information to students to learn to read notes. So I kind of fell for it too. So a lot of traditional piano teachers, they're teaching this method, like how to read notes that they didn't even grow up learning. So if you hear the frustration in my voice, yeah. So I'm going to tell you that reading notes is not super complicated. I'll show you a very simple process. Simple doesn't mean easy, by the way. And you don't need to learn, this is how much theory you need to know to learn theory, or not to learn theory, to read music notes. You don't need any at all. And it's not supposed to take years, which unfortunately I've had some transfer students, and I've noticed this sadly, that many of them, when they come into my studio, they can't read a single note. And some shocking cases where a lot of them have been playing piano for years, and they can't read a note. That is insane. It's like if you're learning a language and you can't spell after a few years. That's crazy to me. Okay. And for some reason, many of them come from the Yamaha method. So there must be something wrong with that method if you're not able to teach them to read notes. Okay. So what is the right approach? The right approach to all of this is, like I mentioned in the beginning, just taking a bunch of action and having the correct tools, right plan, and process. And the reason why a lot of teachers and a lot of people in general, they don't want to take a lot of action, it comes down to this fear of failure, which is pretty much ingrained in us through society and schooling, where it's you have to get every single note right, like A plus, not note, but grades, right? Like get A plus, perfect score on the tests, and then that is all that matters. So we're afraid to make mistakes. So an action-based method, when you use this method, by the way, I'm just going to give you a disclaimer. You're going to make a ton of mistakes. It's like just flopping around into the water until you learn how to swim. Okay, but you'll have a lifesaver, so don't worry about that. So it's just a bunch of actions, and that's the fastest way to learn. Actually, making more mistakes, you will get more information, which will inform you about the approach that you can make adjustments, and you'll get better in a faster amount of time. And another reason why people tend to avoid an action-based approach is because they're not using the correct tools and they don't have the right plan or process in place. But once we have I'm going to show you the correct tools. I'm going to show you the right plan. After that, just please promise me you're just going to take as much action as possible. Don't just sit around and do a bunch of theory homework. Okay. So basics for the complete piano noob, or even just music in general. You notice I have a picture of my piano here, and you see there is a pattern going down here in black and white keys. So we have 2 black keys and 3 black keys as well. So it just goes 2, 3 up and down the piano, 7 white keys underneath. This is how we learn to identify the note letters. Okay. Now you want to shorten it into these sections, a lot easier to think this way. So now instead of just thinking of this entire cross section we have here, we're just thinking 2 black keys and 3 white keys underneath. It's good to divide this way because it's easier to find the keys. Okay, so for instance, if we have the 2 black keys, we simply look at the white key that's on the left, the white key that's in the middle, and the white key that's on the right side. We go to 3 black keys. I like to say that we have a white key on the outer left, white key in the center left, center right, and outer right. And this is how we identify and locate the notes on the piano. You see here, C, D, E, F, G, A, B. You just need to know the first 7 letters of the alphabet. I don't like to start on an A, okay, even though that's the first letter, because it's going to be hard to find that, right? If you start on C, then we have this cross section here with the 2 black keys, and then F over here. So this is the way that you should be trying to read notes in the beginning. Yeah, or just like if you're going up and down the piano. Okay. Now, if you know it's up and down the piano, it just repeats up and down the keyboard, piano, whatever you have at home. Next thing up is the grand staff, and this is what we place our notes on. This is how we locate the notes and learn to read. So if you look at the grand staff, we have this thing on top, which is called the treble clef, and on the bottom is the bass clef. And we try to make things as simple as possible when I'm teaching students for the first time. So a good rule of thumb to follow is that everything in the treble clef, everything in the bass clef, you think everything is going to be right hand in the treble clef, everything is going to be the bass, everything in the bass clef is going to be the left hand. Obviously, that changes over time. So we're not going to stick with this forever. It's just in the beginning, you need an easier framework to follow. Now, going to the actual treble clef, you'll notice there are 5 lines, and you can count from the top or bottom, really doesn't matter, 5 lines. And then we have 4 spaces in between. The reason why this is important is because each line represents a letter, and each space also represents a note letter. Now, you have to keep in mind for the bass clef, the placement is different. So if you see the bottom line here and treble clef is E, the bottom line in the bass clef is going to be G. And likewise with the spaces, first space is F, and bass clef first space is A. Now, I'm going to say something very, very important. Please listen up. And this is also going to piss off a lot of piano teachers, and rightfully so, okay? Should never learn the mnemonic that they're going to teach you for this, okay? There is a mnemonic. Now, mnemonics are useful, okay? Like they're very handy, like memorization tools. So I'm not saying mnemonics are bad. They're not. They're just bad in this situation. But for a useful example, I use a mnemonic and this is just a circle of fifths, like how to memorize the exact order, the exact sequence of all the sharps as well as flats, right? So for the sharps, it's F, C, G, D, A, E, B. Okay, and the mnemonic they teach for this, and I kind of change it just to entertain myself. So it's fat corgis going down alleys eating burritos. F, C, G, D, A, E, B. Okay, and same thing with flats. It's bead, G, C, F. So it's B-E-A-D, bead, which spells bead, obviously. So it's like a necklace bead. And G-C-F, gum candy fruit. B-E-A-D, bead. gum, candy, fruit. So in that situation, very useful. But in this situation, you do not want to learn a mnemonic. I don't even want to say it because that's actually how useful mnemonics are. If I tell you it, you're not going to be able to forget it. Now, the reason you do not want to learn a mnemonic for this is because once you learn it, it's going to become a crutch and it's going to become a handicap later. So what I mean is like eventually there comes a point where you have to completely forget about it. And a mnemonic, you have something that's so easily to remember, it's going to be one of the hardest things to forget because unlearning is way, way harder than learning something in the first place. So when I get these transfer students, it's unfortunate, but 99% of the time is taken to if they've memorized the mnemonic, like we have to spend 99% of the lesson trying to train them out of it, trying to make them forget it, trying to make them unlearn it. So just don't do it in the first place. It's not worth it. Okay. Now, if you have actually learned one of these mnemonics for this, for note reading, and if you want to know how to forget about it, I'll show you the process at the end of the video. It works with every single one of my students. It will work for you to help you unlearn this unuseful mnemonic. Now, the reason why you don't need to learn a mnemonic is because we're going to use this learning concept, which is called perceptual processing. Perceptual processing is basically just learning with flashcards randomly, okay? And I got this example from the book, How We Learn. And in the book, the author talks about how he's trying to differentiate different art pieces from different artists. He wants to know what the differences are. Like, well, not exactly what the differences are, but he wants to look at a painting and be like, okay, this is Monet. Look at another painting, and I don't know a lot of impressionistic painters, right? But it's like another painting and be, okay, is this artist? So I think what his daughter did was create a software for him, and it's basically just a flashcard software. So what would happen is he would just get a flashcard with the exact painting, and that's it. No other tips other than that, just the exact painting, and he would press the button for the answer. Like I think it was multiple choice, like which painter is this? And then that's it. That's all he did. Nothing else. So just going through a bunch of paintings and just randomly guessing because it's like he didn't know anything about art and he wasn't about to take an art course. And the reason why he did this is because he was going to a Europe trip soon, I believe, and he wanted to visit museums and be able to tell what the differences are. Like, why is this one different than that one? Or just be able to tell which artist is which. Okay. So that's it. Just randomly guessing with no other instructions other than that. That's it. Like no tips, no hints, no studying necessary. That is perceptual processing. It's a really wonderful concept to use to learn anything, basically. Now, what are the tools you're going to need? And two very simple tools, very affordable. I'll put links in the description below after we are done with the live stream. But you can just get this off of Amazon. This is where I get it, actually. So first thing you're going to need is a Hal Leonard keyboard guide. If you look here, you put it on your keyboard or piano. You can see it will help you easily identify the notes. You want to think of these as your training wheels. The second thing you're going to need are flashcards, which are just helping you identify each note individually. Now, when you have both of them together, here's the actual method. What you're going to do is you're going to take the flashcards and only do middle C position. And middle C position is basically from this F in the bass clef to this G in the treble clef. The reason why we use middle C position is because a lot of the beginning material, or the best beginning material, by the way, the best beginning material, in my opinion, you should check out the Faber Studio collection. Go to the website. I have a free guide that you can download. So beginners and easy music use middle C position all the time, and it's necessary because you need a constraint. You need just a short range, because if I just tell you to play the whole entire piano, it's not going to work. So it's a fixed 5-finger position in each hand, makes it a lot easier, less overwhelming. And you see here, cut off F, so there should be an F here. But if you see it on the How to Learn a Keyboard Guide, this is actually what it looks like, the range, missing the F. So what you're going to do is basically take each flashcard and just try to match it with whatever note that you see on the keyboard guide. So this is D on the flashcard, and when you get good at it, you'll be able to see, oh, this is also D on the How to Learn a Keyboard Guide, and you'll see my finger there. You actually want to play it on the piano at the same time. Don't just say it. You want to play it, taking as much action, physical action, as much as possible. Now, up here, I showed you the no answer side, but what you're going to do is you're just going to flip it all over. And then you notice I group it into bass clef and treble clef. And again, with the answers, what we're doing is trying to make it as easy as possible, because if you're watching this video, I'm assuming you're doing this completely on your own without help from anybody, without any piano lessons, no teacher. So if you're doing this, what I think is important is not so much challenge in the beginning, but accuracy. You want to be able to like get the notes right in the easiest way possible. Challenge will come later because you don't want to be practicing the wrong thing. That's going to really mess you up. Now, you just do this, just go up and down the piano, take in each flashcard, and then also maybe you can place it in front of your face or whatever. But anyway, just playing it on the keyboard guide, okay, on the piano using the keyboard guide. Just do this with every note. When that gets easy, you just do the same thing, but this time shuffle it. So now it's in a random sequence, and you could shuffle just the bass clef by itself. You could shuffle the treble clef by itself, and the last part that you can shuffle, just do it all together. So then you don't know if you're going to get a treble clef note or a bass clef note, okay? And now, when you're done with that, you just simply repeat this entire process, going back up here, the middle C position, again, laying it out in this sequence, making it as easy as possible, but this time without the answers showing. By the way, when you are doing without the answers showing, what's very important is when you play it on the piano, you have to flip it over. You got to verify your answers all the time, okay? Consistently, because a lot of students make this mistake. They just assume they're getting it right. Like, you need to know for sure if you're getting it right or not. The only way to do that is to flip it over and see the actual answer, okay? So you do that, and then once you play it in sequence, then the next thing after that, oh, it's over here, okay? After that is to shuffle it and then everything out of sequence, the exact same thing that I mentioned earlier, okay? Then when this is easier, you go back and you go all the way to the beginning, right? So with the answers showing, but this time take the keyboard guide off of the piano. That is the next challenge after that. So you go through this entire process, and then you know you're in a good place when you get to here where you don't see the answers and you're able to play it without the keyboard guide. Then that means you're really getting somewhere. You're really going to make some progress. From there, all you have to do is expand the range of notes. So again, I recommend just doing this slowly if you're learning the solo without a teacher. This is actually not how I do it in piano lessons. What I do is we go from easy, and then after they reach this last stage and they don't have the keyboard guide, I put the keyboard guide back on. Then I just do all the difficult flashcards. So it's just going from like 0 to 100. But we can do this because like I'm there to guide them. Like, I would not recommend this approach if I were you, unless you're up for the challenge and you can deal with that, okay? But I think the more realistic way is just to slowly expand the range until you're using all the flashcards, okay? And like I mentioned, keyboard guide on, and then the final challenge is to have the keyboard guide off. And this is basically it. This is all you need to do. This is the plan in a nutshell. Just be patient because everyone is different. Yeah, and I'll explain something in this last section going beyond, and it has to do with spaced repetition. And I'll leave a link to a video where you're going to want to watch this video because it explains the whole concept of spaced repetition in more detail than I'm going to give you here, plus other useful practice concepts as well. But spaced repetition is important because it's the idea that instead of doing something 10 times in a row without stopping, it's much easier, it's much better also to do it once, then wait a certain amount of time, do it again, wait another certain amount of time, and do it again. So you're spacing out each rep, if that makes any sense, okay? So say you do it once now, wait 10 minutes, do it again, wait another 10 minutes, do it again, and so on. So there's a caveat to that. What happens is, if it's easy, say you practice whatever it is and it's easy, then you can actually start to increase the amount of time. So what happens is you do 10 minutes, then you can wait 20 minutes, then you can wait an hour, then you can wait a day, then you can wait 2 days. You get to the point here what I'm talking about, once a day, once a week, once a month, once, let's say half a year. And I would say once half a year, you want to practice all this till you get to the point where you're doing all of the advanced flashcards without the keyboard guide. At this point, it would be useful to start using spaced repetition, okay? So you get to the point where you only need to do it like seriously, like once every half year and then once a year. I think if you get to the point where you're doing once a year, as long as you're practicing sheet music, you probably don't even need to practice this method anymore. Like, you don't even need it after a certain point, okay? Although that is highly subjective. You really got to figure out when that point is for you, when you're going to cross that threshold. So this is really important because and like the proof is in the pudding. That's so cliche, but the reason why is I kind of stumbled across this concept before I even knew what it was in the beginning, before I even read that book. Because what I would do is I would only do this once a week at the lessons with the students because they wouldn't go home and practice this. They would not practice this, no matter how many times I begged them. So I noticed even if we just did it once in the lesson, that they would actually show improvement and they would eventually get there as long as they're practicing. Like if they don't practice, then of course you're not going to show any improvement. But as long as they're practicing, they just did it once a week. They got to a level of fluency. Kind of blew my mind, right? And then I read the book and I was like, oh, that makes so much sense. Okay, so that's spaced repetition. You definitely want to look at that. Now, if you have learned a mnemonic and you want to unlearn it, it's a simple process. This is really all you need, but it's not easy, and you're gonna understand why in a second. So we've all heard the saying, ready, aim, fire. So the way to unlearn a mnemonic is just to skip ready, aim. It's just go fire, 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 fire. Okay. Now, what it is just basically playing a note before you're ready. So what I started to use is just a countdown, a simple countdown, and this is what's going to help you unlearn a mnemonic. So if I have a student in the lesson who has learned one of these mnemonics and we're trying to train them out of it, or if I have a student who is just taking way too much time, overthinking every flashcard, and you can see there he's using like and they call that the landmark method, where they just compare everything to middle C. So they start to do that. They start to use middle C as a guide to find each note, whereas I don't want them to do that. They just want to find a note, just play it. Like, don't use that as a crutch. And the only way to do that, and the only thing that I figured out, is by using a countdown. So if I notice them doing this, I'll tell them, okay, look, I'm going to count down from 3. By the time I get to 0, I'm going to flip over the card. I want you to play a note no matter what, whether you think it's correct or not. So this kind of helps them overcome their fear of failure. That's why they don't want to use this method, and I force them to do it. Okay. So the first time they do it, it's kind of hilarious. Like, they'll just freeze. They won't even play a note, and that goes back to fear of failure. They're afraid to play a wrong note. So if I notice this happen, like, I say, look, the only failure is if you don't play a note. I'm not even like counting. Like, and I tell them stories. Like, I've had students who pretty much missed every single note when I use this method. And that's not the point, because once they get used to this and they're used to just playing the note without like preparing mentally for it, like fire, 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 it is crazy because this is perceptual processing. They'll tend to just autocorrect over time. So if they miss all the notes in the beginning, the next time they get like 20% right. The next time they get 50%, eventually they get to 100%. So that's how to train yourself out of it. Because if I do a countdown with a mnemonic, you don't have enough time to think about it. So because they think like, well, like I said, I don't even want to say the mnemonic, but they're like blah 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 blah. It's this note, blah blah. It's like when you do the countdown, you just short circuit that, and you don't even give them enough time to do it in the beginning. Now, what's difficult about this is that I don't know how realistic it is for one person to do this. So you might need to get a buddy, unless you're really good at being self-disciplined. Like 3, 2, 1, flip it over and play a note. Like, it's really hard to pull off. So in this instance, you might need another partner to help you out with this, to keep you accountable to playing note. Okay, so that is the only difficulty that I see with this countdown. Okay, now besides that, make sure to check out the next live stream I'm going to do. We're going to cover how to read sheet music. It's similar to this process, and again, you're not going to need to learn any theory, but we also use the same tools, so keep that in mind. Okay, so make sure you have the notification bell on for the next live stream if you want to catch that. And that's it for today's video. If you've enjoyed the video, if you haven't subscribed by now, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell. If you learned something in this video, hit the like button. If you know someone who would benefit from this video, share this video with them. Lastly, make sure to let me know what you want to learn in a future live stream. I will see you guys next time. Have a wonderful rest of your Sunday, and happy practicing.